Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between. I am Diana Clarion, and this is the Sunday stream. I'm looking at the status of my stream here, and it's a little dicey. I'm going to see if things are looking right because I want to make sure I do this right because this is probably the most important stream I'm going to be doing in the very near future anyway. I had Kate Farr, Bionic Dance, with me. She seems to be having some hardware problems. I'll hang on and see if she comes back. But in the meantime, I will get started on what we're into today. This concerns the election that is coming up in a couple of days here in the U.S., which many people have said is probably the most important election we will be facing in the near future, at any time in the future. Our entire democracy could rest on this. And a while back, while I was looking at things for another video, I came up on an article in the New York Review of Books by one Christopher R. Browning, who made some comparisons that I found very interesting. There are many people who have compared the current administration to Hitler's Germany. But what Mr. Browning did was draw comparisons not between Nazi Germany, but the era that led to it. The era of the Weimarer Republik, for example, the Weimarer Republic, and also some activities that were going on here in the U.S. at the time. The article I reference here is in the New York Review of Books, 25 October 2018, called The Suffocation of Democracy. And in that article, Mr. Browning has stated a few things. One of them here, that in the 1920s, the United States pursued isolationism as foreign policy, um, not joining the League of Nations, for example, ensuring that freeloading, in quotes, former allies could pay back the war loans while otherwise leaving foreign trade alone, um, and basically allowing an economy that mirrors this one, allowing the transfer of wealth from the base of the populace to the very, very wealthy, the 1% that we see today. Um, and he states that then, as now, this was in place. Also, Trump is wanting to withdraw the United States from just about everything. Um, any sort of alliances, agreements with the rest of the world, um, with organizations and agreements that have, as Mr. Browning puts it, preserved peace, stability, and prosperity since 1945. Trump, on the other hand, is looking for zero-sum game, win lose, and this is the sort of thing that produced World War I, the Bolshevik Revolution, the Great Depression of 1929, and the fascist dictatorships, World War II, and the Holocaust. All that sort of thing then and then now. But the worst of it, and from the title of this article, Mr. Browning made comparisons with Das Weimarer Republik. This was a period between the wars where there was hyperpolarization in German politics, hyperinflation, uh, hyperpolarization in society, and what are we seeing now? And there were moves by President Paul von Hindenburg to reduce the freedom of speech, of the press, of assembly, and finally of parliamentary democracy itself. And what are we seeing now? The administration is indeed, as far as I can see, attempting to trample, if you will, on civil liberties and what am I after here? And in the same way that it happened then. And something that Mr. Browning did not mention, because it hadn't happened yet, are the more recent developments as far as stifling parliamentary procedure itself. What we have now is the attempt, or at least the announced attempt, to write transgendered protections out of Title IX, something that Betsy DeVos started very early in the administration when she began attacking education in the United States from within the department she chaired, the Department of Education. There was the total debacle with Supreme Court nominations. We had Mitch McConnell spearheading the total blockade of appointing or confirming, I should say, a Supreme Court justice after he was nominated by Mr. Barack Obama, that justice being Merrick Garland. It was not until Donald Trump was elected that Mr. Brett Kavanaugh, was rammed down the Supreme Court's and the public's throat in a spectacle I have never seen before in my life, where a man who melted down on live television in the confirmation hearings themselves was still confirmed to the United States Senate, to the United States Supreme Court, when on the basis of his behavior alone, he should never have been considered after that meltdown. And even former Supreme Court Justice Stevens made that comment, as I will attempt to show on the screen in a moment.
I should explain that with regard to Judge Kavanaugh, that I have a picture of him in my book. I put his picture in the book to illustrate my admiration for it. So at that time, I thought he had definitely the qualifications for to sit on the Supreme Court, but I think that his performance during the hearings caused me to change my mind. I think there's several commentators, Larry Tribe among them, who's a constitutional law professor at Harvard, have written pieces in which they suggest that he has demonstrated a potential bias involving enough potential.
We just got breaking news this morning, according to Axios. What the president is talking about doing, he hasn't done it yet, it's one of these things where he's musing, he will do it because he wants us to talk about it, is to do away with birthright citizenship. That's the idea that if you were born in the United States, you are a citizen of the United States. Let me read you what the 14th Amendment says about this. The 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. That's the 14th Amendment. This is what the president wants us to talk about a week before the election. Listen.
Some legal scholars believe you can get rid of birthright citizenship without changing the Constitution.
With an executive order.
Exactly.
Right.
Have you thought about that?
Yes.
Tell me more.
It was always told to me that you needed a constitutional amendment.
Right.
Guess
14th
what?
Amendment.
You don't.
You don't.
Number one. Number one, you don't need that. Number two,
I mean, that's in dispute.
you could definitely
That's very much in dispute.
Well, you can definitely do it with an act of Congress, but now they're saying I can do it just with an executive order. Now, how ridiculous. We're the only country in the world where a person comes in, has a baby, and the baby is essentially a citizen of the United States for 85 years with all of those benefits. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And it has to end.
Have you talked about that with council?
Yeah, I have.
So where in the process?
It's in the process. It'll happen. With an executive order. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah,
that's
it's
a very
exactly what I'm
interesting.
talking about.
I didn't think anybody knew that but me. I thought I was the only one.
We just got.
I hit the button a little early on this, but this was in reference to Trump's announcement that he intended, with an executive order, to eliminate birthright citizenship for those who were not supposed to be in this country, as he believed. Now, whether or not one agrees with this, it is, in fact, totally unconstitutional, which the ACLU happened to mention in a tweet, which reads, "This is a blatantly unconstitutional attempt to fan the flames of anti-immigrant hatred in the days ahead of the midterms. The 14th Amendment's citizenship guarantee is clear. You can't erase the Constitution with an executive order." Now, I'm going to close this out in my part of this anyway, out in a second here, with this is why I believe this to be the most important election the United States has faced in my lifetime, possibly in its history. Kate, I see you've come back.
I have, yes.
What say you?
Internet died like you wouldn't believe. I don't know why. Well, most of what I want to know right now is what is he trying to accomplish by making it like you can't become a citizen just by being born here? Why? What's that going to do?
My understanding, or at least as far as I can make any sense out of anything, is in the CNN, which unfortunately you were not able to hear because I still haven't figured out how to get the audio and visual to my panels as well as to the audience. You become a citizen for like 85 years with all the benefits, and you don't even belong here, is basically what he's saying. And okay, maybe that is the case. I don't know if he's right about that or not. That's not the question here. The question is, can he do it at all? Why is he even intimating that he can overstep the Constitution of the United States, the one that is supposedly so near and dear to his heart that I have yet to see he's even read yet? Kate, it looks like Kate's frozen again. We're going to have one of those days today. Okay. As I say, that is my question. Why is it that this man feels that he can just step on the Constitution? That, as Mr. Browning pointed out, is very much like the dispensing with parliamentary procedure in the Weimar years leading up to the Nazi regime. Yes, he is also inciting violence. He started from the time of his campaign, and he's, for the love of St. Gulick, if you will, this man has ordered troops to be dispatched to the southern border of the United States to defend, if you will, against a caravan of immigrants that at that time was still just outside of Guatemala. This is not sane. This is not rational. And the fault is not his alone. The Republican Party is allowing this to happen. Nobody had any chance, nobody rational had any chance of, for example, sidelining the Kavanaugh confirmation to the Supreme Court, or the the confirmation of Neil Gorsuch, for that matter, establishing a firm, hyper-conservative bloc within the Supreme Court. Nobody could do that because the entire Republican Party was not only allowing it, but encouraging it. These people, Republicans who could have said, no, we've had enough, said nothing. Or if they didn't say nothing, they said, here, here, let's have more. This is why this is the most important of all elections that I know of. My Faye, if you don't mind coming on, I'd love to have you. And the other thing is that if there are more in the audience who have more to say, and if they have more, if they would like to talk about this, once the show has run its course, I have an after show set up. We can always go to that. Andrew Bowen, he emboldens the more extreme views and normalizes them. Yes, absolutely. I lived through a constitutional crisis called Watergate. Watergate was nothing compared to this. We have a serious problem here in the United States of America. I definitely plan on voting on Tuesday. Voting as if democracy itself depended on it, because it very likely does. And I also think that this may be one or possibly two elections left if we don't act now to stem this tide in a non-violent manner. I don't like to say these things because they can be interpreted wrongly. They can attract attention of people who think that I'm speaking of something I'm not speaking of. But I have talked to people recently. Hi again.
Impotence. It just won't stay up.
Oh my. Oh my. Oh my. I don't know if you've been able to hear what I've been rattling on about.
No.
Oh
No,
my.
I've missed all of it.
Well, let's go. I've said a lot of. I believe that this is the most important election of my lifetime, possibly the most important election of the United States' history, in the sense that we may, please correct me if I'm wrong. I want to be wrong here. This may be the end of democracy here coming very soon. Am I correct? Am I incorrect? Please, I need to know that I'm incorrect, and I need to have a firm basis for it.
I mean, it's possible, but I'd like to believe that we have at least until the next presidential election. I'd like to believe that, but I don't know. I can tell you this much. I really hope that the CAexit movement succeeds.
I don't blame you. I really don't. I almost wish well, I do wish I lived out there, but for political reasons, I wish I could afford to live in California because I'd very, very happily take the CAexit route.
Yeah. Now, granted, a lot of people have said that if CAexit succeeds, there will be civil war over it. Because let's face it, California has like what, the 5th biggest economy in the world or some crap?
I think something like that, yes.
Yeah, and so like the rest of the U.S. can't afford to lose California.
Right. Do I have it correctly that California actually produces more, if you call them dollars, than they receive from U.S. government?
I don't know that part.
Okay, there are a couple of states who do, and the U.S. does not want to lose them. And I think Texas might be one of them. But Texas is a world unto itself. There's another thing that I want to see, if anything, as a symbol to Republicans everywhere. And I'm going to use the term Republicans because the violators, I guess, of the moment seem all to be Republican. I mean, there may be some Democrats out there who aren't the most savory, but I only know of 3 who have actually been turncoats. I think this was in South Carolina. Have you seen that by any chance?
You're going to have to be more specific.
There was a independent coalition of Democrats that were caucusing with Republicans in one of the state's legislatures. So, in that state anyway, no matter what you did, you were voting for the people that wanted to continue what we're seeing now. I mean, there were a few things I kind of glossed over because I'm still a little out of practice with these shows, and I'm going to really work on this. But what we're looking at is a lot of widening of the gaps. We're looking at greater discrimination against undesirable groups, and the coalition in that state was instrumental in continuing legislation of that sort.
I've managed to miss this entirely. I don't know about this particular event you're talking about.
Okay, I'm gonna have a real quick look because it was recent. There was a determination made that that group had to disband. Now, if I can just, there we go. Independent.
Yeah, arms to Syria.
Okay, that's another fun one. You still on? I found it. Okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I found it. It's the Independent Democratic Conference. Let's see if I can bring the full Wikipedia page up. Oh, it's the New York State Senate. God, it was that far north. Was a group of Democratic members of the New York State Senate that caucused separately from other Democratic members of that state Senate. And that caucusing was with the Republicans, in fact. So you had basically a number of turncoats. I know the whole partisanship is a bad thing, but it's beginning to look like, at least on one side of the coin, there is a concerted effort by a certain group of people to actually cause the destruction of any form of parliamentary government here in the U.S. Am I wrong? Please, I want to be wrong.
Well, like I said, I don't know. I mean, I'd like to think we have at least until the 2020 election, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it does seem like they want to move us towards a Trump-centered dictatorship.
Yeah, and well, that's one of the things I was thinking of is I don't know if Trump's got enough going on between the left and the right ear, as would be said by someone I used to work with, to conduct such a dictatorship, but he would certainly make a good puppet. Because the people who are pulling the strings, I can think of a certain turtle-shaped senator from Kentucky, for example. I don't know if a certain representative in Wisconsin is still sticking around to wreak havoc or not. But yeah, I mean, if Trump cannot pull the wagon, there are people who can.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, it's we're seeing a lot of what we've seen before, where people were trying to wrest control by making everyone else fight amongst each other while they grab all the power.
Yes, and I'm seeing that. because every time something serious starts to come up, there's another derailment. I mean, this most recent, the Title IX and the birthright citizenship, even newscasters are saying this is an attempt to get people's minds off of the midterms and all riled up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and Wonder Lady here is like Trump spoke about a lifetime president,
Yes, he
and
did.
that would be. Well, let's face it, there have been a couple of lifetime presidents in this country. JFK, for example, was president for his whole life.
Yes, he was.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't think that anybody will stand for that, honestly. Like there would
I
be a
hope
lot of people
not.
who would be totally all about it, but I don't think it would be enough to make it happen. I mean, unless he tried to force it through with one of those executive orders, I have a feeling there would be a revolt if he tried it.
Well, there's the thing is something that worried me and still worries me. For example, the I call it the improper installation of Neil Gorsuch. The Republicans refused to even consider the the nominee that Mr. Obama advanced, and nobody could do anything about it because number one, the Republicans were in the majority, and number two, if you followed the rules, there was nothing to do about it. There were no rules about it. Even the founding fathers themselves hadn't considered a group of people as single-minded as the Tea Party Republicans are. And this is dangerous.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's one of the problems is when people come up with this great idea for how things ought to run, and there's just something we're like, no one would ever pull that crap. We don't need an amendment or whatever about it. And it's like, wow, you underestimate the greed and selfishness and conniving of people.
Yes, I mean, there may have been times where we almost had that sort of thing. I think Andrew Jackson might be an example, but never, as far as I can tell in my reading of history, and I'm not a historian by any means, never as close as we are now, where I am actually afraid. People I've talked to are actually afraid. I went to a historical presentation on. It concerned the Neil Armstrong biography. It was at the Heinz History Center here in Pittsburgh. On the way out there, she and I were talking about various things, and the subject turned to politics. And at one point, she said she hoped that this situation could be resolved without much bloodshed,
Ugh.
if I remember it correctly, or possibly without bloodshed. But that word came up. And even during Watergate, that word did not come up.
Yeah.
I mean, people are worried about civil war, and I don't blame them for being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, and the thing is, I don't know how that will go because, I mean, usually when we think of the military, usually at least when I do, I think of the right wing. Like the military would totally be on the side of the right wing.
Mm-hmm.
And I live in a Navy town.
Yes.
So I don't know how that's going to go.
Yeah. I don't know if cooler heads would prevail. I don't know if there are cooler heads to prevail in the United States military. Excuse me. I know that for the most part, the Air Force is very, very, very right wing. They might be the most right wing of all of the branches. And then the Navy might not be that far behind. And who knows where the Army is.
Yeah.
Wonder Lady, you know what? Very, very salient point. Diana, Kate, I think we are already in a civil war, an intellectual one. I see that you answered.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, but you know we mean a shooting war. Come on.
Yeah, and I definitely fear one. I don't know what to do to prevent one. I mean, not myself personally. I'm not Supergirl or anything like that. Believe you me, I'm not Supergirl. It's just I don't know that there is anything that could even be remotely construed to be in place. And what do we do when we start picking up the pieces?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I could see a lot of secession going on. Like, if there was a civil war that started up, I could see a lot of states saying, "Nope, we're not part of this shit. We're leaving you. We're part of Canada now." Like, there's been a lot of talk that I've heard anyway of not just California, but California, Oregon, and Washington breaking apart and possibly becoming part of Canada.
I've seen that map. Yes.
And, I'd be okay with that, especially if, like we said, tell you what, if you give the United States Quebec, we'll be part of Canada. How's that? What? What?
Oh man, I'll never be able to learn to speak French. I've tried.
Oh,
There
I
isn't.
hate that language so much. I
At
mean,
least
there's
no.
like, well, but I mean, the funny part is, as much as I don't like French, I'm trying to learn Klingon. So, yeah.
There is not enough crap that I can put into my mouth to speak this French. Anyway, let's get
Right.
back to the seriousness here.
Yes.
I mean,
Wait, seriousness or Syria-ness?
yes.
Go on.
Um,
But yeah, no,
what are the
the country is it's going in so many weird directions right now.
I don't know if there will be a democracy, honestly, in 2030.
Gosh, 2030. I'll be like 60 something, maybe 50 something. I don't know. I can't do the math. I'm terrible at math. But yeah, I mean, there have been times when I've seriously considered, like, I just moved to San Diego 2 years ago, but I've been thinking it might be good to be in a different country entirely. In fact, if the weather in England, in Britain, was not so much like Seattle, I'd already be making plans.
Okay. I have looked into things, and unfortunately, in the position I am in, I just don't have enough wherewithal. I don't have enough that Canada would even let me in, and I don't. Maybe I could try to claim refugee status, because by that time it's going to be a lot worse than it is now.
Actually, well, I wonder, like, what does a country look for when they decide to let someone become a new citizen? Is it what, like your income, your assets, what?
Productivity is one of the considerations that I know of. Can you be a productive citizen? So
I wonder how they define that.
I'm thinking, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know. It might be like holding gainful employment.
Well, I mean, speaking as a now decade-long YouTuber, I mean, I don't know if they'd care about that. If they'd go, yeah, but that's not a real job. I'm like, I'm making my living off it. But, you know, but I mean, if Canada wouldn't want me, who knows? I mean, it might be fun to try, what, Australia, New Zealand, maybe? I don't know.
Well, New Zealand is a lot of fun because it's splitting in half.
Is it? I haven't heard this.
There is a fault running, I believe it's southwest and northeast, or is it southeast to northwest? There's
Funny thing
another
is,
one to look up.
I thought you meant politically it was breaking in half.
No, it's physically breaking in half. The fault is just north of Christchurch, and yeah, it's the continent seems to be a lot more extensive than it appears from the ocean's surface.
So basically what you're saying is I need to find some aliens who will take me off the planet entirely.
That might be the case.
Okay, so maybe my birth parents could show up and take me home to the old home world, maybe, please? It would be nice.
There you go.
But no, so, I mean, gosh, it's weird to think that the United States could be headed straight down the tubes and there's no way to get out before the shooting starts.
Yes. Mark Caesar, New Zealand is supposed to be the most livable country. And they already got rid of Ray Comfort.
I know I've got at least one friend there who'd probably be glad to hang out. So, yeah.
Okay, yeah, Faye. That one is the military's oath, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Well, see, that's the thing, though, is domestic. That is, I mean, come on, who decides, like, who the enemy is, domestically speaking?
Yeah, when you're dealing with splinter groups within a country's citizenry, it gets dicey.
I mean, because there's going to be people who point at Trump, say enemy. There's people who are going to point at the people who oppose Trump, go enemy. How do you pick?
Well, it's going to just become a very large circle jerk, if you'll excuse the expression, to where the first person shooting is going to eventually have somebody shooting at their back.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I could be the hell out, but and there are probably a lot of people offering to help get me out of here.
Well, I can think of worse things right now, honestly.
Because I have looked into what would be necessary to seek asylum.
Mm.
And at the moment, it's very dicey, but I don't want to have to test the boundaries there. I don't want to have to try.
Yeah. Well, and you know, the thing is, when I left Seattle, I looked and I was like, you know, if Canada was nice and warm, I'd be living there instead.
Yeah, there's some reasonably nice places in Canada, some quite nice Canadians.
Well, yeah, but it's still really cold.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I was raised in Vermont. I know cold, and I can, like, I've been in California, Southern California, for 2 years now, and 70 degrees Fahrenheit feels frickin' freezing to me now. Like, I've
Oops.
definitely acclimated.
Oh my, you're in trouble now.
Uh-huh.
I can make it down to 58 with a little bit of a sweater anyway.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not really looking forward to winter again.
Yeah, same here. This morning I was talking a little bit about that, I think, if you remember. It was that stretch of homelessness for a couple of years there that really did it for me. But happily, for the moment, I'm in a warm place. But there again, my warm place is government subsidized. And it's like, when am I going to get my home pulled out from under me, if you will?
Mm.
That's why I noticed it earlier. I have trouble. Let's say I'm shopping and I'm going through the checkout aisle. I start to say, I'm going, wait a minute, I'd better not say that, because the last time I regarded a place home, it got yanked out from under me.
I'm sorry, you lost me. You're saying I'm going what? Home?
Okay, yeah, I would start to say I'm going home and stop myself and say, wait a minute, I can't say that, because the last time I considered a place home, it literally got pulled out from under me.
Okay, this is
Which
sounding
is-
superstitious, but okay.
Yeah, it's, I don't know, PTSD-ish. I know it's not PTSD, but...
Well, I mean, one thing I find kind of funny, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but you hear politicians talking all the time about how, like, people just don't want to get a job, need to get off their asses, and that's why they can't have food stamps and yada, yada, yada. And
What
as I
job?
understand it, well, and as I understand it, though, food stamps are actually really damn good for the economy. Because people are going out and spending money, getting business going. They
Yeah.
need more employees. The more people are spending money in these places.
mhm.
So it's like food stamps are good. Hello?
And most of the people, as far as I understand, who receive food stamps are already working.
There is that too.
Yes, I'm one of the few who is not, mainly because I am on a disability pension. I'd like to change that, but it'll be interesting to see if an atheist, lesbian, trans woman who's been in a psych ward a couple of times would be any of a shot at the Senate seat in Pennsylvania.
Well, Well, that seems like a lot of dirt they could dig up, doesn't it?
Yeah, which is why you just come right out and say, "Yeah, that's me."
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that would be an interesting way for a politician to campaign is like, let me open up the closet and send all the demons out and be freaking proud of it instead of trying to sweep it all under the rug for like my enemies to find it and then like throw it out at me at a debate. Aren't you this? And it's like suddenly it becomes a thing of shame, right?
Yeah, and that would be the hardest part for me, making sure I've got all of it because there's so much of it to start with.
I don't know. I could just picture me running for office, and then someone like I don't know. Suppose I'm like otherwise in every other way the perfect candidate, and then some reporter gets up during a debate and goes, "Miss Farr, is it true that you prefer Star Wars to Star Trek?" Oh shit, that's gonna divide my entire. Everyone, like half of the people who are gonna vote for me now aren't gonna. And yeah, but I mean, imagine you leave that out. That's the one skeleton in your closet you leave out.
Oh my! By the way,
Oh,
antediluvian atheist. Absolutely yes. It's just my fault for finding the time to get hold of you. We can talk about that after the show. In fact, um, I don't know. Is anybody interested in a live stream? I could get the one I have ready set up. I'm not closing the show out right now unless you want to, Kate. But if any of you out there are interested in a live stream after this thing runs its hour, please put it in the side chat and we can talk this stuff out. We can talk a whole bunch of other stuff out. What else is on your mind, hon?
oh, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's like political stuff because this was supposed to be about politics, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Um,
That's the way it started.
there, I'm sure there's political stuff that I want to talk about, but it's one of those things where it's like, what do you want to talk about? Oh, sorry, that was my incoming text message thing. Like it startled me for a second because it also made my watch vibrate. But
Whoa.
yeah, no, it's like when someone puts you on the spot, goes, "Hey, do you want to talk about like what subject do you want to bring up?" I'm like, I wasn't thinking about bringing something up, so it's like, I don't know. But like I was saying, I mean, there's that whole voting thing happening on Tuesday, right?
Well, you've
Uh,
got your stuff done already, right?
I do.
Very
I
good.
early
Very
voted.
good.
I early voted. That's one of the things I love, and I don't know why everywhere hasn't done this. Is both in Washington State and here in California, we have mail-in voting, right? Where
Okay, yes.
you can do your ballot, pop it in the mailbox, bada bing, bada bang, bada fuko, right? So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Boy, that's a
um,
reference.
I know, right?
That one I
Someone
got.
said that. Someone said that in high school. It made me laugh, and I've been saying it ever since. I don't know, but also though, okay. I mean, let's talk voting here. I love the idea of ranked choice voting. I
So
think that
do
is
I.
such a great idea because then a third party candidate would have a chance.
Yes, I would love to see that instituted. Of course, in order to do that, you've got to have in office people who are sane enough to at least consider that sort of thing and not power grabby enough to know what that would represent and absolutely forbid it, procedurally.
Yeah,
Um,
well, I mean, that's the thing, though, is we would have to get someone like, for example, Bernie into office simply
yeah.
because, I mean, they clearly, the Republicans and Democrats would see the writing on the wall for what
Oh,
ranked
of
choice
course,
voting would
of
mean
course,
to them. So they would block it as hard as they can, as
of
far
course.
hard as they possibly can. So then, I mean, it would mean one of two things for them. Either they would have to clean up their act and start working in the interests of the people to stay in office, realizing that that's what the office should be, or they're going to fight, like I say, as hard as they can to make sure it doesn't happen so that they can keep being as selfish and prickish as they want.
Yeah, and the other thing is, unfortunately, it takes more than a single Bernie to get something like that done. I mean, no single person, even as a president, had Mr. Sanders won the election in 2016, as I so much wished he would have. we would still have had Republican majorities and Democratic minorities in the House and Senate, for example, to deal with. We would have largely Republican state legislatures and governorships to deal with, because really they are the people who control the manner in which the voting is done, if I remember correctly. If I am not correct, please somebody correct me. I would much rather be told I'm wrong than keep saying the wrong thing and screw everybody else up.
Well, and I mean, it's obvious we need more than just one Bernie, but we absolutely need someone like him as a president.
Sure.
Because otherwise that shit's getting vetoed so fast, you won't even see it like sit on his desk before it's signed. Here, sign this. Shh, take it away, right? So,
and the
also,
other thing,
am I the only one who often wonders like why it isn't an earliture instead of a legislature instead of a legislature? Sorry, I cannot hear that word without that thought going through my head. Cannot do it. And I finally said it after like a decade of thinking it. I finally said it, and now I feel better. Well, come on. I mean, what are you expecting over here, huh?
Oh my! Shut up, Clarion.
So yeah, but
oh my!
I don't know.
4 cities, California doing. Oh my! I did not know this. Okay, did you know? Wonder Lady has said there are 4 cities in California conducting ranked voting tomorrow.
Well, clearly one of them wasn't San Diego, damn it. But okay.
I wish Pennsylvania would do something about getting at least up to the mid-20th century as far as things like that go. You can't even mail a ballot here.
It's funny. I was actually talking to some folks on Facebook about like basically why you should or shouldn't vote for a candidate. Like we were having the discussion about the blue no matter who kind of thing.
I'm not so.
Yeah, I know. But I was like, look, I mean, if the president, like the presidential candidate, is not someone who's working in my interests, working for me, making the country I want to live in, they're not getting my vote. And they're like, yeah, well, that means that their opponent is going to win, doesn't it? And I'm like, well, I mean, I'm like, no candidate will get my vote ever again unless I agree with their policies, unless their policies are appealing. And like basically voting my conscience.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, well, people like you are going to be the doom of this country. I'm like, okay, if you say so. But it seems to me that if we always settle for good enough or the lesser of two evils, we'll just keep getting slightly more evil and slightly more evil and slightly more evil until the lesser of two evils is pretty fucking shitty.
And I exactly see your point. Yeah. And it digs at me as far as that goes. I mean, the condition itself, not you digging at me, where you're saying, well, I've got to do something to try to avoid the imminent doom so I can worry about the long-term doom tomorrow. But still at the same time, what you're talking about, if you vote the lesser of two evils or the least of the evils and do nothing else, yes, absolutely. Things will go visit hell in a handbasket, basically.
Well, I mean, this is why the whole country, especially for president, but all other races as well, needs that ranked choice voting. Because then it's like, well, my top choice is neither of you two fuckers. I'm not voting red or blue, right? And then they might realize if I want to have this job still, I've got to work in the interests of the people and not myself.
Yeah, and which is as it should be. It's just getting there. I don't know if I'll see that in my lifetime. I certainly hope I can. I hope I certainly see a U.S. later on in my lifetime, but that's another story.
Well, here's the
Um,
thing, though. I mean, is change necessarily going to be gradual? Is my question. I mean, is it necessarily that this can't happen just in a flash?
well, one of my things is all that I've seen throughout my life is a sort of a gradualism thing, is that, to my eyes anyway, now I hope I'm wrong, the populace prefers stagnation. They prefer the status quo. They really don't want to change anything. Um, and the only really, snap change like that is not very kind to the people around it, if you know what I mean. Things seem to get rather red rather quickly. And I'm not
Well,
talking about politically red.
well, see, the thing about that, though, is from my perspective, at least here in this country, it seems like the red prefers the status quo. That they would actually like to stay right where we are, at least like politically. I mean, socially, sociologically, whatever. I mean, obviously, they want us to be a lot more white and like hetero and all that stuff. But when it comes to like what we're doing with, say, military, taxes, budget, all that stuff, they're like, no, 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 keep it there, keep it there. Just what we've been doing all along.
Or
Uh,
give us more. Yeah, that's the other one. If
yeah.
there's any change, it's going to be for
Whereas,
them.
whereas though the left generally does seem at least a little bit to prefer the social change in the left wing direction. But then
Yeah,
again, they've also been very middle of the road with budget and stuff lately too. In fact, it's easier to look at the Democrats and realize that they are basically Republicans from a few decades ago.
yes, absolutely. You are absolutely correct. Um, which could mean two things, one of two things, or maybe two things all at once. It could mean that the Republicans back then were that much better, or the Democrats now are that much worse.
Well, and it doesn't help either that both parties have sort of switched a couple of times. Like, people, Republicans who are sick and tired of being painted as horrible people will point out that Lincoln, who freed the slaves, was a Republican. It's like, yeah, but politically speaking, the Republicans back then were more like Democrats.
Well, there
It's
was that switch in the 50s and 60s, the ideological switch. You watched it occur. Um, there were people changing their affiliations. John Connally, governor of Texas, is an example that comes to mind, was a Democrat, switched to Republican because that was more in keeping with his racist and a few other things ideology. I believe Strom Thurmond was another one. Please correct me if I'm wrong on that. Yeah, you were able to right around between Eisenhower and Reagan in that period.
Does Strom Thurmond sound to anyone else like some guy who'd be fighting Conan?
I strong Thurmond. Yes, when
That's just
actually.
I can't hear that name without thinking, like mighty is my sword kind of thing. That's how it sounds to me. I don't know. Yeah.
Oh my. And it really gets me to think of those times and think of them as better than they are now. Um, because back then a lot of things were so much worse, but there wasn't that whole imminent doom thing.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I
there was
mean,
the whole Cold War, but then something else again.
yeah. Well, and I mean, as much as the Cold War was something we kind of did to ourselves, it was also a foreign threat. So it
Yeah,
wasn't it
something
wasn't
around which we
quite
could.
it, it wasn't quite the same as we're starting to feel like the threat is completely internal.
Yeah, I was going to say, at least we all could rally around the cause to oppose that external threat. But now it's a little enclave here, a little enclave here. Okay, let's butt heads. And it's going to be the death of us yet. What? So does that mean we have to have another Cold War? God, I don't want that.
I don't know, in a weird way I'd almost find it funny. I mean, like the Cold War I don't know if paper tiger is the right way to describe it, but it just basically seemed like a lot of politicians jerking each other off.
Yeah, and military saber rattling, and
Hmm.
well,
But I
even
mean, I don't think anyone really like the people who might have made this decision. I don't think any of them really thought they were going to push that button and nuke the Earth. I think that was something to scare the public with.
yeah, well, that's what MAD was all about too. Is that each side knew that as soon as they pushed the button, the other button was going to get pushed, and there was going to be no place for anybody.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I was pretty little, watching the movie War Games and being spooked to shit about it.
Would you like another game? Yeah.
Yeah, because there was that whole thing of you could get nuked and it could just all happen because mean old Russia and all of that stuff.
Well, if I
And
remember correctly, something like that damn near happened, where a simulation tape did get into a system somehow. But
hmm,
happily, I'm gonna have to look that up, and I think Simon Whistler may have done that on Top Tens or something like that. Um, Feel free, folks in the audience, all three of you, to go look that stuff up.
okay, actually, that the audience is much bigger than that. In fact, it's double that.
Oh wow! All right. And
Yeah.
wait, I've just seen the number go up to. Well, okay, I'm one of the people watching.
Okay, and I
I'm
am too.
okay.
So
So now we've got 5 people watching. Yes, I
yeah.
like that, Jackson. The Democrats are no prize, but the Republicans are analogous to the toilet scum in a gas station bathroom that has been cleaned. That has, I assume you mean, has not been cleaned since 1982.
Yeah, it would be nice to have more of a choice.
It would. It
I mean,
really would.
the whole problem with a two-party system is that, if they ever decided to work together to ensure that we all get exactly what they want, even if it's in a different package, like here's politician A, here's politician B, they're in different parties, but they stand for the same freaking things. If they seriously, if they ever all got together to have that little conspiracy, they could do it, and there'd be nothing we could do about it. Because getting people to vote for a third party is really difficult. People are so unwilling to vote for someone other than red or blue. I was
Yes,
even talking
yes.
to my dad, my liberal hippie dad, when the most recent election came up. And he was like, no, I am going to vote Hillary because we have to have someone other than Trump. And I was like, but that's just playing into the game. He's like, I don't care. This is a safety measure. I'll vote better next time in the next election. I was like, and then the next election is going to be the same freaking thing. When do we get an ideal candidate? Someone has to stand up and say, no more. We're not going to do this anymore. And that's not going to happen unless people have the courage to vote for someone other than the top two.
Well, there's never going to be an ideal candidate. Not even me, or not even you.
Oh,
I
stop
mean,
that. I'll be
better you
perfect.
than me. Well, there I was going to say. I'm far from ideal. Okay, you're the perfect candidate. You definitely have my vote. No question about that. When are you running and what for?
Well, actually, you know what's really funny? A few years ago, I think it was Obama's reelection. I'm not sure. A couple of people did tell me that they wrote in my name on their ballot for president.
All
So somewhere in
right,
some dusty old cabinet somewhere are two ballots that say Bionic Dance on them, and that's just too cool.
that's beautiful. Somebody should find those and frame them and give them to you. Um, yeah, what am I thinking here? It's yeah, every candidate is going to have some flaw, and what we really want is a candidate whose flaws are maybe limited to wearing plaid and stripes at the same time or something like that. That I
Well,
could take.
if their if their policies are 70% amazing and 30% shitty, that's probably 200% better than we've been doing. So it's like,
You're conservative on that estimate.
well, but I'm saying is like if it turns out that I don't know, they support something I don't much care for. I don't know what. I'm trying to come up with an idea that's not silly. but then they support like 18 other things where I'm going kick ass, and that one thing that they support that I don't isn't a kick in my own personal teeth, well, they'll probably have my vote.
Yeah, and what I would hope for is that you would have a core of good values that everybody would share, and then the rest of it would be an even match, and it would be okay. Should we have? Let's see. Should we have more libraries this year? Something like that. No, no. This person doesn't want more libraries. They want more. They want to set up a speaker's corner, the way. What park is that in London? I think it's
I
in
don't know.
London, where you can basically set up your soapbox and talk away all day on a Sunday. I think it is. Well, that would be fine with me.
Here's an idea. I mean, instead of like putting up new libraries, give everybody a Kindle. Do you have any idea how much free literature there is on Amazon right now? I downloaded like a dozen, maybe 2 dozen books last night, not a dime.
I had not
So, I
realized
mean,
until you had mentioned it this morning. Yeah, with all
yeah,
the first editions out there, and the first volumes.
yeah. I mean, if there was some sort of government program to give everybody a digital device that they could read on, I bet there'd be a lot more reading.
That would be nice. It really would.
And there are a lot of countries out there where they just go, okay, everyone, you're getting this. That's just all. I mean, one of the things, actually, I'm surprised I didn't bring this up earlier. They've been talking about like a universal basic income where
Yes.
everyone just gets a certain amount of money from the government, and that is your frickin' paycheck. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, I would be rolling in dough simply because I have like no rent right now. And I make a fair amount of money on YouTube, actually. I can sock away a few $100 every month. And then if the government starts giving me a shit ton of money too, I'll be rolling in dough. It'll be crazy pants. But then I'm a special circumstance. There's all those people who can't pay rent right now, who, if they had this universal basic income, they would have much, much, much easier lives.
I would even support something that was a graduated sort of thing, if you can predict where I'm heading. Let's say someone who has absolutely nothing at all gets such number of dollars, let's say X, and then if that person finds work and starts to make a little bit more and a little bit more, you might have the receipts that they get reduced slightly. Let's say if they make $3, their UBI receipts are reduced by 1. And you keep working up until finally, you're not receiving any UBI because you're making it on your own and you're able to, and everything's great. That I could live with.
Yeah,
something like the Social Security is supposed to be.
But I mean, basically, people say, yeah, you're just going to bring back welfare, is what they'd be saying.
We've already got welfare, so what do you mean bring back?
Yeah, but well, I mean, because a lot of people look at that. I mean, I can't remember the last time I heard someone actually mention welfare. It's almost always EBT. It's always food stamps they bring up for some reason.
Yeah, but that is welfare.
I remember, well, no, but I mean, like more than just food. Though. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember when I was in like high school, junior high, whatever, there was always that one kid who comes from the poor family on the wrong side of the tracks and all that. And the nickname for that kid was welfare, right?
Yeah,
They would just call that kid welfare. That was the whole thing. And I'm like, that term got so stigmatized.
Well, I remember.
And every time you hear a Republican talk about giving anybody any money whatsoever, they always talk about how they're so lazy, they don't want to get a job, yada, yada, yada. I mean, getting something passed that gives people a certain amount of income that they think they didn't earn is going to be so stigmatized by the right wing.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And the darn thing is, I was almost going to say, yeah, the right-wing folks should come and talk to us, but no, they would never listen. In my experience, people who receive assistance, let's leave me out of the equation so that I'm not biasing it at all. Look, everybody else I've talked to, I would say 99 and 44/100% of these people don't like the fact that they are receiving the dole. They'd rather be doing it themselves. They are just not able to because, for some part of it anyway, economics have been manipulated to the point where there is no work for them. That sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hell, if I could just double my subscriber base on YouTube, I could live solely off of the tubes.
Oh my, that sounds wonderful.
I know, right? And it gives me so much free time to work on other. I mean, when I say free time, I spend a lot of that time working on projects that could be. I mean, it's not just playing; it's productive. Like I say, I'm working on this one animated thing that I may turn into a web comic afterward, and it's an absolute blast. And I'm spending some time learning foreign languages. Granted, one of them is Klingon, but even so, I mean, like being a professional YouTuber has a lot of benefits, and part of it is having free time to be more creative.
Indeed, and oh my word, Wonder Lady, 1,200 is rent, utilities, and heat budget. It's starting to become difficult to find something here in Pittsburgh for under 1,000 a month if you don't want to go into the really, 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 really shitty neighborhoods that look like a flow of effluent. Um, some of the places I would not have thought of going for over 600 were going for close to 12.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we don't really seem to have that neighborhood in San Diego, or if we do, I haven't encountered it. But we do have a weapons grade homeless problem here. I mean, there are people without housing everywhere, and you see them on the street all the time. Sometimes they're like literally sleeping on buildings and stuff like in front of building doors and things. I'm sitting there thinking if we did have that universal basic income, how much better their lives would be.
Yeah, the only question I would have to ask, and I know I'm going to sound like a Republican, but I don't mean it that way. How is it going to be funded? Would really have to work that out. There's got to be a way to do
And
it. It's just
that
finding
well,
that way.
that way is extraordinarily simple. Like cut the military budget by even like a tenth, and we could probably do it. I mean, what is it like 7 trillion or 700 trillion or some crazy trillion number of dollars? It,
It's
it would not. It would not take much out of the military budget, and they wouldn't even fucking feel it to fund a program like that. To fund just about everything we want to fund, if we took down the military budget even like 10%, there'd be no difference in our military, and all these people could like we could have free college and like a living wage, all of that stuff.
and that's going to mean, and I'm for what it's going to mean. It's going to mean getting our fingers out of everybody else's pies as well. Uh, we are in places we have no business being, with
Hmm.
guns firing at people who don't look white and Christian. Um, so we've got to change that ideal as well. And even when you do change that ideal, you've got to be able to take care of the people that you're bringing home. And the United States is doing that so poorly, if they're doing it at all. Uh, Care
Well,
for PTSD victims is like,
Well, it's amazing when you hear some politicians talk about it, about how the United States is supposed to be the world's Superman. We are the guardians of peace and justice across this planet, kind of thing. And I'm just
eh.
sitting there thinking, we really don't need to be that. The rest of the world can take care of itself. Really, and we have no obligation. Not only do we not have any obligation, but sometimes we're royal pricks for coming into other countries and saying, "Hey, we're here to help, whether you want it or not." It's just, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know,
Excuse me, I was
but
swallowing some coffee there.
It really would not take much to make this country more productive, to make life better for all of the citizens. It would just take. The problem is, it would take a reorganizing of the paradigm of this country.
Yeah, the whole bit about the who's going to guard freedom and whatever else, they're not saying that. They're saying, who's going to guard what I'm getting into my pocket for kickbacks on the cost of what it takes to guard it, basically. I mean, the whole Daddy Warbucks concept. And that was back from the 1930s. So yeah,
I never really thought about what that name meant exactly. I just heard the bucks part, and for some reason, the Warbucks just never meshed in my head.
It took a long time for me as well, but then you slow down in your mind. Warbucks. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's always been a problem with people profiting off of bloodshed. It's one of the greatest problems I've seen in the United States as far as that goes.
Well, I mean, I will admit, for a while, I actually had a job where I was profiting off of bloodshed, which is to say I was making video games. So it was like virtual bloodshed, but still.
Okay, well, I guess people weren't dying in all that large droves anyway, unless you count those who had coronary seizures while getting so excited over it, right?
Well, I was thinking about those poor programs who are all dying at the whim of us users.
The C++ classes that are dying, right? The instantiations.
Well,
And
I
now,
was just making a Tron reference, but okay.
now here in this political discussion, there are going to be future viewers, all four of them, saying, "What the hell was she talking about?" Anyway.
Yeah, well, and yeah, Wonder Lady's totally right. Take profit out of prisons. That would be nice.
That was an amazing thing. I saw that when it was first mentioned, and I said, "What?" Because the only prisons I'd known up until that point were in some way government funded. And isn't that the way you really want it? Because somebody had mentioned it in as many words. The way a prison turns a profit is by having prisoners and getting paid on a head count, if you will. And what do you do to have more prisoners? You make more arrests. What do you do? And convictions. What do you do to do that? You make laws that make perfectly normal and harmless things illegal. To where you were.
Remind me, is the people who go back into prison, is that recidivism? Do I have the right word for that?
I believe that's the word, yes.
Okay.
I'm going to look it up just to be sure.
Well, it's funny. I actually know someone from the atheist booth, actually, that I helped staff. I had no idea dude had some sort of horrible record. I still don't know what he did, but I do know that he recently missed a parole meeting and went back to prison for possibly 1 to 10 years.
Bože moi. And yes, it is recidivism with a D,
Right.
not a T, in case anybody listening wonders. Yeah, the tendency of a convicted criminal to reoffend. I mean, I've worked with a number of convicted criminals. I was on a live stream with one who was very open about his past record, and it is indeed possible to manage in the world after being convicted, but it's made, politically made, such that it's not as likely as you want it to be.
Well, I mean, that is one thing that I've always found kind of strange. I mean, from what I understand, if you've ever been in prison ever at all, there's a lot of stuff you now can't do, a lot of restrictions in your world. It's like you can never finish paying your time. Like your debt to society, as they like to call it. Even when like your parole is over and everything, there's still this black mark on your record that gets in the way of every damn thing.
Yeah. You want a job to scrub toilets. It's, do you have a criminal history? And you have to put it down, because if you don't, there's...
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine, Faye, that there's a lot to talk about. Um, there's just so much that needs to be changed, and unfortunately, it needs to be changed all at once because it's been allowed to accumulate for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
I have to admit, I'm part of the problem is I wasn't as politically active 30 years ago as I am now.
Yeah. Well,
Oh,
I mean, I'm like, you know, almost 43 now, and I spend a lot of time not giving a flying rat's testicle about politics, but part of that was largely because I just wasn't equipped to even understand it. So getting involved was something where I was just like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing here. So,
and I'm going to admit that part of the change in my political activism, if you will, is the change in my status. I am now part of a group or part of a couple of groups, really a couple overlapping groups that I myself didn't know I was a part of back when I was 30. And a group or set of groups that are not everybody's favorite. And of course, I'm talking about the fact that I'm a lesbian trans woman. Um, we queers are facing a lot of shit, if you want it in plain English.
well,
And
and in
that's
a weird way, that didn't help because I've always lived in progressive areas of the country. I mean, Vermont was one of the first states to have civil unions. I mean, should have been gay marriage, but still civil unions. And then I moved to Seattle and then California. It's like I've never lived somewhere that's deeply red. So I never personally had to face anything. Right. And so that
yeah.
made it a lot more difficult to get involved because I was like, what? Get involved with what? There's nothing to get involved in. So
Hello, Neil 604 Atheist. How are you? I just noticed him pop in here. Hey, you stole my line, Neil. Hey, kids. Um, yeah, and where I grew up and lived was okay. I was born and raised in Ohio, which is a jack shit place. It's more red than you would think. And then here, Pittsburgh. There are, they say, three enclaves of sanity. Pittsburgh, believe it or not, Philadelphia, and can you believe Harrisburg? And okay, this is going to be non-family friendly from here out already. The rest of the state is as red as a used tampon on a heavy flow day, especially when you're looking southeast. Get outside of Philadelphia, and oh my word. Um, so yeah, there are some real problems. Educationally, Ohio looks like West Virginia, and
hmm.
it's on the United States northern border. Um, I believe that's one of the states where teaching creationism in science class is actually encouraged, if I remember correctly. Um, but yeah, it's you is one lucky lady that you've been able to that you've been able to live in places like Vermont and Seattle and San Diego. I am envious of you. I totally am.
Well, there's a lot of other problems with Vermont, don't get me started. But at the same
Mm,
time, yeah, there was a certain amount of I'm glad I was there now, retroactively speaking. But at the time, I used to beg my parents to move to what I would have called civilization, right? Because I mean, Vermont is very rural, and
yes, it is.
I was in the one tiny splot of something that might be called suburbia, and it was not enough for me. I wanted to live in like L.A. or New York City because I felt. I mean, I'm not a country kid. I'm not a forest and trees kid. I am very much a civilization. I want to live like the Jetsons kid, and my parents are very not that. So there was a lot of I need to get the fuck out of here when I was living in Vermont. Now I look back on it and I'm like, maybe it wasn't that bad. It wasn't great, but it wasn't that bad either. So
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't all that bad living in Cleveland. I mean, sure, you were the laughing stock of the nation, but still, Cleveland was not Marietta, or Cleveland was not Chillicothe, or anything like that.
yeah, I don't know any of those places, so I'll take your word for it.
Marietta. Well, I went to school in Marietta. That was uh, the thing outside the farm. Otherwise, it was all farmland. Chillicothe is, I think, the southernmost city, very southernmost in Ohio. And again, it's all rural. It's all farm. Um, when you're down in that area, you would think that the Mason-Dixon line ran through Columbus. So yeah, it was an interesting experience going to university in Marietta. You got to see that weird admixture.
Yeah. I mean, what's funny is, like I say, I lived in something that was vaguely well, I mean, there was something you might call a city, I guess, Burlington. And then there was definitely, it was surrounded by suburbia for a bit. It wasn't very large, but then you get outside of it and it's all like pastures and shit. But all of us kids who lived in that one tiny pocket of civilization used to make fun of all the rednecks. So, I, so but I mean, if you get outside of Vermont to a place like, say, San Diego or Seattle, they'd probably look at all of us, and go, "What are you talking about? You're all rednecks too." So I don't know.
Oh my! Now I see people joining up over in the live chat, and I don't. Okay, you'll be back, Neil. I mean, we've actually got a whole 6 watching. Okay, Wonder Lady, you're starving. How many of you folks are wanting to continue the conversation? How many are looking to have something in a what's the word I'm looking for? An after show, that sort of thing. Because I mean, I had a little bit of a rough start. I've really got to work on my presentation. I know this. But the
Well, and it
topic
didn't
is,
help that my internet kept dropping, which made continuity difficult.
yeah, that too. And oh, God's itchy paws. Many are cold, few are frozen. Yeah, because I'd like to keep this between 60 and 90. And what I've got right now is 77. And nobody snapped their fingers right now. And yeah, 77 Sunset Strip. But yeah, that's dated.
I don't even know what it is.
That was a television show in early 60s.
Okay. Sure.
I can't even remember what the plot was. But it had something to do with Sunset Strip, obviously, but
Fair enough.
mhm.
Well,
Oh
in any
no, I am
case,
so sorry. My condolences to Peter and the rest of the family.
ugh, that's the opposite of good.
Yeah, his mom died.
I
Okay.
didn't authorize that. It's not okay.
Yeah, slightly derailing the conversation. I'm envious of the people who can, upon the death of a parent, feel grief rather than relief, as I felt.
Yeah.
Oh well.
I have gone through some stuff with my parents where, honestly, I'm not sure which I will feel.
Okay.
I mean, because like, it's like they love me in certain ways, and in other ways not, but it's more like neglect or short-sightedness than it is any kind of dislike. But it's in some very important fundamental ways that they've failed. So I don't know. I could do a whole series of videos on how I feel about my parents, so I'll just stop now. But
Mm.
when they finally end up dying, I don't know how I'm going to feel about it.
Oh, by the way, Faye, yeah, that's the impression I got, is that it was your friend Peter, rather than Holland Peter. Hey, Nadja, how are you doing? You hanging onto the turtle legs, huh? But
Yeah. Oh
with
man, it's funny. I saw a meme recently where people were talking about how like flat earthers must think that asteroids might hit the bottom of the Earth.
okay, what, it just sort of started spinning like a, let's see if I've still got that old, no, I don't have it, darn it. Oh, okay, well, yeah, you could have the penny, and then the earth just starts doing that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, that would be
Oh,
entertaining, actually.
okay, so, is anybody up for an after show?
I could do it.
Yeah, I know you just got here, not Ja. Because I've got it ready to go, and that would keep this one relatively short. Not that anybody would want to watch it, but maybe they would. I mean, I'm learning, I'm getting there, I'm making things a little better as I go every time. Yeah, you certainly are. Tell you what, I am going to go. I started heading to the new tab. I'm going to go to the YouTube live events, and I actually will put out the get over here. There you go. Let's see if we do this right. I hope we do this right. I'm gonna tell you what. I'm gonna copy the link address from there. I am going to edit it and set it from private to unlisted for the moment. And into the side chat, yours truly is going to place the link. Like,
Oh, are you sure that's a good idea?
what? Oh, I didn't
Well,
do.
because
What's a
I
good
think
idea?
putting the link in the chat.
No, the link to watch.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say.
No, not the join link. I actually did that for a few minutes, for a few seconds at one point, but yeah, that was a thing I did very quickly because it was the spur of the moment thing I had to do basically to get somebody in. And no, I got the wrong link on that one, so I'm going to try this one.
You know, I'm sure someone explained it to me at one point, but I totally forget. Like the flat earthers who think that there's a whole conspiracy to make us think that the Earth is round. What do they think the gain is? Like, why would people even want to do that?
That's the weird one. I have no idea. What's the payoff? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, into the side chat, I have indeed placed the watch link for an after show here, because I see, okay, Jackson, you've either been hiding and just spoke up, or you got back after having left for a while. Not Ja, would love to have you around, and absolutely, absolutely, Faye. If you're interested in coming over to the watch link, or I can even give you a join link. But then again, you said you have to eat. So with you, that's very important. I know that. That's medical. Okay, you guys on the right, what do you think? Do you want to come over? Do you want to come over?
Well, I will be right back. I actually need to take my meds.
You actually, okay, and
So
so
seriously,
what
30
I'll do then,
seconds.
oh, 30 seconds. If that was going to take more than that, I was going to close it out and we could go over to the other one, but
No, 30 seconds. I'll be right back.
no problem at all. And you know, you reminded me. Get over there, you. And yeah, this is the life of a reasonably new YouTube personality. I don't know if I'm a personality or not.
Zervigo I hamdan.
It's good for you. And you reminded me, and I take to mine as well. So let me see if I have to find where the thing is. Okay, next. Okay, one is waiting at the Weimarer Republik after show. So, okay, what I will indeed do then is I will set that one to public. Give me about 5 seconds so that everybody and everybody's whatever can come on in. Where are you? Okay. And then we can close this out. Kate, did you want to
participate in the after show?
did you want to tell everybody who you are, or did we just want to just go over the after show?
Hey, I don't. If there is anybody in the chat right now who doesn't know who the hell I am, I'll be shocked.
Okay, fine. So everybody over on the right side, we're going to head over to the after show. Kate, you're not even going to have to re-sign in. You can just stay on the link, and we'll migrate over. And
Okay.
guys, go on over there to the one I posted. I'll post it again just to make sure that everybody sees it. Okay, here we are. And we're going to copy. And we are going to paste. Like so. And, okay. I want to thank everybody for coming over to this one. And hopefully my babbling was interesting. Well, Kate, you certainly helped things along. Thank you for giving me a hand here, because it goes so much better when you're here, being that second person to keep the conversation going. I still haven't learned how to do a solo.
All part of the service. Just something I'm doing here. Yeah.
Okay, guys, and we're going to migrate over, so take care, everybody who's not coming over. And as Mr. Anders said, thanks a lot, troops. As Jim Lovell replied, see you on the other side. Take care.